He raised a salute, wearing my name, my medals, my blues. "Evening, civilian," he joked, drunk on my whiskey and my wife. She leaned against the kitchen door frame, wearing my deployment shirt, sipping from the mug she once gave me. Then she looked me dead in the eyes. "Now you know." But what they didn't know was that I hadn't come home to beg. I came home 4 weeks early, with a locked briefcase, a federal filing window, and a plan. But before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. My name is Cole Merrick, and I'm 34 years old. After 9 years as an Air Force mechanic, I've spent more time fixing jets in sandstorms than sleeping in my own bed. My wife Kimberly and I married right after high school. She swore she'd wait forever if she had to. The smell of jet fuel still clings to my hands most nights, but her letters, pressed with pink lipstick kisses, kept me going through every deployment. These days, though, her handwriting looks different, rushed somehow. My supervisor, Master Sergeant Davis, just approved my early leave request, 4 weeks ahead of schedule. I haven't told anyone, not even Kim. The roses are ready, and my dress blues are pressed. But let me start from the beginning. The red-eye from Qatar was packed tight, but I didn't mind. My duffel bag rode in the overhead, dress blues carefully folded inside, while I kept the roses close. You ever try sleeping on a military transport? This commercial flight felt like a luxury cruise in comparison. Even the crying baby 3 rows back couldn't dim my mood. 15 hours later, we touched down in Atlanta. My boots hit American soil at 2:47 a.m., and let me tell you, that first breath of Georgia air felt different, sweeter somehow. The terminal was ghost town quiet, just the way I liked it. No crowds, no questions, no well-meaning civilians trying to thank me for my service. Just me and my mission. The rental car counter had one sleepy-eyed clerk who barely looked up from her computer. "Economy or mid-size?" she drawled. I went economy, force of habit from years of military budgeting. The car was basic blue, forgettable, perfect for my surprise. Kim wouldn't spot it in the driveway and wonder who was visiting. You know that feeling when you're so tired you're actually wide awake? That was me, cruising down empty highways at 3:30 in the morning. My hands kept drumming on the steering wheel, practicing the moment. Should I ring the doorbell? Use my key? Maybe I'd whistle our song from the driveway, that old Keith Urban tune she used to love. The roses rode shotgun, looking pretty rough after the flight. But Kim wouldn't care. She'd probably cry. She always did at homecomings, even when she knew I was coming. This time, I couldn't wait to see her face. Our neighborhood hadn't changed. Same cracked sidewalks, same oak trees dropping acorns like tiny bombs. The security light at the Thompsons' place still clicked on too early, catching nothing but shadows. Even that crooked mailbox we kept meaning to fix stood exactly as I'd left it, listing slightly left like a tired soldier. I killed the headlights 2 houses down, muscle memory from all those times I'd sneak home late from base, trying not to wake her. The porch swing creaked in the breeze, Kim's favorite spot for morning coffee. Yellow light spilled from our kitchen window, painting a warm rectangle on the front lawn. My heart picked up speed. She was awake? At this hour? The driveway felt longer than I remembered. Each step closer to the front door made the roses tremble slightly in my grip. 9 years of marriage, and she still made me nervous. Good nervous, you know? Like that first date flutter, but deeper. I reached for my keys, then stopped. The front door stood slightly ajar, warm air seeping through the gap. My combat instincts twitched. We always locked up tight, Kim especially. But before I could process that, voices drifted from inside. Male voices, laughing. My hand pushed the door wider. The hinges didn't squeak. I'd oiled them before deploying. One last honeydew task checked off the list. The entry hall stretched dark ahead of me, but light and sound spilled from the kitchen. More laughter. Words I couldn't quite make out. That threshold felt different under my boots. Wrong. Like the solid oak floor had turned to sand, shifting and uncertain. The roses hung heavy in my grip as I took that last step inside, crossing a line I couldn't uncross. 9 years of marriage, 3 deployments, countless promises, all balanced on the edge of whatever waited in that kitchen. You train for combat. You train for emergencies. But nothing prepares you for the sound of strange voices in your own home, carrying through halls where only your wife should be. The hallway seemed longer than I remembered, each step echoing against hardwood that used to welcome me home. My combat boots, still dusty from the desert, felt heavy as concrete. The laughter grew louder, bouncing off family photos I'd hung myself before deploying. Kim's voice mixed with the male one now, intimate in a way that made my stomach clench. You know that moment in movies where everything slows down? Where the hero gets that split second to prepare for the hit. Real life isn't that kind. It doesn't give you time to brace. He walked out of my kitchen like he owned it. Tall guy, clean cut, wearing my dress blues with a casualness that made my teeth grind. Every medal, every stripe, even my name tape, perfectly positioned on his chest. The uniform I'd earned through blood and sweat and endless desert nights, now costume jewelry for some stranger in my home. He spotted me and grinned, probably thinking I was one of their friends. His hand came up in an exaggerated salute, playing soldier. "Evening, civilian." The words slurred slightly. They'd been drinking. My deployment mug, the one Kim had given me before my first tour, with "Come home safe" painted in her careful handwriting, was in her hands as she appeared behind him. She wore one of my old Air Force t-shirts like pajamas, leaning against the doorframe with familiar comfort. No shock in her eyes, no shame, just acceptance, maybe even relief. Well, she took another sip from my mug, casual as Sunday morning. "Now you know." The roses slipped from my fingers. Red petals scattered across the floor like drops of blood on my mother's antique rug. The same rug where Kim and I had slow danced on our last night before deployment, her whispered promises still echoing in my ears. "I'll wait forever if I have to." Forever lasted 9 months. His grin faded as understanding dawned. The saluting hand dropped. He glanced between us, finally noticing the duffel bag at my feet, the desert dust still clinging to my boots, the costume player meeting the real soldier. I should have felt rage, should have wanted to tear my uniform off his back, but all I felt was hollow, like someone had scooped out everything that made me human and left just the shell standing there. The muscle memory of thousands of military drills took over. Back straight, face neutral, emotions locked down tight. Without a word, I turned and walked out. The night air hit me like a slap. Georgia humidity replaced by something colder, sharper. Behind me, I heard Kim call my name, but it sounded foreign now, like she was addressing a stranger. Maybe she was. I drove until sunrise, no destination in mind, just following roads that led away from that house, that scene, that life. The sun was climbing over Atlanta when my phone buzzed. One new message. "Kim, we both moved on. Don't make this hard." Both moved on? I'd spent every free moment writing her letters, sent half my combat pay home for her business dreams, fell asleep each night touching the wedding ring I never took off. Not even in the worst sandstorms. The phone buzzed again. "Kim, he makes me happy. You were gone too long. 9 months. That's how long it took her to replace 9 years, to give away my uniform, my home, my trust, like they were just props in a play she'd grown tired of performing. The desert wind had never cut this deep. I pulled into a truck stop somewhere north of the city. The morning crowd shuffled past my rental car. Truckers, tourists, families starting their day, normal people living normal lives. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked the same as always. Same short brown hair, same focused eyes, same discipline written in every line. But something had shifted beneath the surface. Something fundamental. You can train for combat. You can prepare for mortar fire and sandstorms and the constant threat of death. But nothing in the Air Force manual covers finding another man wearing your uniform in your kitchen, drinking from your mug, living your life. Nothing teaches you how to handle your wife, treating 9 years of marriage like a costume she'd outgrown. The sun climbed higher. Another Georgia morning heating up. But I felt cold. Desert cold. The kind that seeps into your bones and doesn't leave until you make it leave. The Georgia sun was already blazing when I pulled into the Motel 6 parking lot. My phone sat heavy in my pocket. Kim's message burning through the fabric like acid. We both moved on. Don't make this hard. Both moved on? I'd been gone 9 months, not 9 years. Every night in that desert, I'd fallen asleep thinking of her. Every morning, I'd woken up counting days until I could come home. Meanwhile, she'd been, what? Playing house with some barroom warrior who thought my uniform was a costume? The motel room smelled like old cigarettes and cheaper cleaning supplies, but it was quiet, private, a place to think. I sat on the edge of the bed, combat boots still laced tight, and pulled out my phone. No new messages, just that same text staring back at me, casual as a goodbye note left on a kitchen counter. You know what the Air Force teaches you first? Not how to fix planes or survive combat. They teach you that emotion gets people killed. Reaction without planning is just surrender with extra steps. I opened my banking app, fingers moving with practiced precision. Our joint account balance hit me like a punch to the gut. 47,342. My combat pay, our savings, everything we'd built together, all of it sitting there, waiting for whoever moved fastest. Time to move faster, I muttered, pulling up the military credit union's website. Within 20 minutes, I'd opened a new account under my name only. Another 10 minutes to route all future military payments there. The joint account? Frozen solid. Let's see how they handled that surprise over morning coffee. The TV hummed static in the background as I dug deeper. Credit card statements, utility bills, every financial thread that tied us together. 9 months of transactions told their own story. Restaurant charges for 2, movie tickets, hotel rooms, all while I was eating sand and breathing jet fuel half a world away. My hands didn't shake. My breathing stayed even. The same calm that got me through sandstorms and missile alerts settled over me like armor. This wasn't just betrayal. It was tactical warfare. They'd planned this, used my deployment as cover, spent my money to fund their little romance. The static from the TV grew louder, matching the white noise in my head. I let it wash over me, drowning out everything except the facts, the numbers, the plan forming in my mind. A message popped up from the bank. Joint account status changed to frozen. Both parties notified. I checked the time. 9:47 a.m. They'd be getting that notification right about now. Probably sitting at our kitchen table using my coffee maker, wearing my clothes. The thought should have hurt. Instead, it just fueled the cold calculation taking over. The Air Force hadn't just taught me discipline. It had taught me strategy. How to identify weak points, how to strike without warning, how to win without ever firing a shot. I pulled out my laptop and opened a new document. Started listing assets, accounts, legal angles, every vulnerability they'd created while thinking I was too far away to notice, every mistake they'd made while playing house with my life. They wanted to act like I'd never existed? Fine. But they'd forgotten something crucial. I wasn't some broken-hearted civilian. I was Staff Sergeant Cole Merrick, and I'd spent 9 years learning how to survive hostile territory. The static from the TV filled the room like white noise in a combat zone. Outside, the Georgia heat baked the parking lot. Inside, I felt desert cold, battle ready. My phone buzzed again. Probably Kim, realizing the accounts were frozen. I didn't check it. Let them panic. Let them wonder. They'd played their hand thinking I'd fold, but they'd forgotten the first rule of warfare. Never underestimate an enemy's will to fight back. I reached for the remote and turned up the static. The white noise helped me think, helped me plan. They'd struck first, fighting dirty and cruel. Now it was my turn. And unlike them, I wouldn't need to hide behind someone else's uniform to win this war. The static from the TV wasn't enough anymore. I needed to move, to act. Opening my laptop, I navigated to the military portal with practiced keystrokes. 9 years of service meant I could find these forms in my sleep. DD Form 2823, Uniform Code Violation Report, I muttered, clicking through the familiar blue-gray interface. You ever get that feeling when you're working on a jet engine and suddenly everything clicks? When all those separate parts start making a perfect, terrible sense? That's how I felt filling out that form. Name, date, location. Each field another piece of evidence against the man who thought he could just slip into my uniform like it was a Halloween costume. The details flowed easily. Unauthorized wear of Air Force dress blues, false representation of military status, attempted impersonation of an active service member. My fingers moved steady over the keys. This wasn't emotion. This was procedure, protocol. The kind of by-the-book response that had kept me alive in combat zones. I attached the single photo I'd managed to snap before leaving. Him standing there in my uniform, that smug grin not knowing he was breaking federal law. The submit button blinked at me. One click, and the machinery of military justice would start turning. Click. The confirmation number appeared. UCV 2023-4472. I wrote it down, adding it to my growing file of evidence. Then I opened a new browser tab. Time to see what else they'd been hiding. The County Business Registry website loaded slowly, probably designed when dial-up was still cutting edge. But patience is something you learn quick in the service. I typed in Trevor's name, then Kim's. Nothing under her name, but his. Blaine Consulting, LLC. I read aloud. Filed 3 months ago. The documentation was all there in black and white. Business license, tax ID, initial filing fees, all paid from our joint account. My combat pay, funding their little enterprise. The timestamps on the transactions matched perfectly with my deployment schedule. I hit print, listening to the cheap motel printer wheeze out page after page. Bank statements, business filings, credit card receipts, each one a bullet in the chamber I was building. The sun was coming up by the time I finished organizing everything into a manila folder. My eyes burned, but my mind felt sharp, clear. Like those moments before a critical repair, when you finally see the whole problem laid out in front of you. I checked my watch. 0700. Early enough for a call to someone who still kept military hours. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't used in years. Victor Maddox, former JAG officer, the man who'd helped me navigate a minor tribunal back in 19 when a supply sergeant tried pinning missing equipment on my unit. I'd returned the favor by fixing his daughter's car when no other mechanic could figure out what was wrong with it, the kind of debt that meant something between service members. The phone rang twice. Maddox, came the familiar gravelly voice. Victor, Staff Sergeant Merrick. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Remember that transmission problem your daughter's Civic had? A low chuckle. Coal? Hell yes, I remember. Saved me about $3,000 and a lot of headaches. What's on your mind, son? I took a breath. I need some legal guidance, off the record for now. This about that uniform violation report you just filed? My turn to chuckle. Should have known he'd still have access to the system. That's part of it. There's more. A lot more. Silence on the line. Then, "You still in Georgia?" "Yeah." "Different address, though." "I figured." Another pause. "Look, you pulled my girl's car apart piece by piece until you found the problem. Let me return the favor." I felt something loosen in my chest, the first hint of relief since walking through that front door. "I owe you," Victor said, his voice taking on that tactical edge I remembered from the tribunal. "Tell me where to start." I met Victor at Lou's Diner just off Highway 19, the kind of place where truckers and early shift workers blend together over coffee that could strip paint. It was 0600, that gray hour before the sun commits to rising. Perfect timing for what we needed to discuss. He was already there when I walked in, tucked into a back booth wearing a polo that had seen better days. Same Victor. Broad shoulders, clean-shaven head, and that gray-flecked beard that made him look more professor than prosecutor. The only thing that had changed was the civilian clothes. "Coffee's terrible," he said by way of greeting, sliding a mug my way. "Just like old times." The bitter smell hit me like a flashback to late-night maintenance shifts. Some things never change, but some things do. He tapped the manila folder I'd brought. "Walk me through it." So I did. Every detail, starting with that homecoming moment. The unlocked door, the uniform, her casual dismissal, the business filing. I kept my voice steady, like I was reading out maintenance logs. Victor didn't interrupt once, just nodded, and took notes in a small leather book. When I finished, he leaned forward. The overhead fluorescent caught his eyes. They had that focused gleam I remembered from the tribunal. "Here's what we do," he said, keeping his voice low. "Two-pronged attack. Legal and public. Hit them where it hurts, then let everyone watch them fall." My turn to lean in. "I'm listening." "First, these bank records." He shuffled through the prints. "Clear evidence of misappropriation. But we need more. Screenshots of their social media. Any emails about the business. Text messages. Especially anything showing they knew what they were doing." I nodded. "Already started archiving everything." "Good. But here's the real target. That uniform violation. It's not just disrespectful. It's criminal. Stolen Valor Act of 2013. Federal offense." The waitress swung by with a pot of coffee. We waited until she passed. "How long do we have?" I asked. Victor checked his watch. "Military Audit Board reviews spousal benefits every quarter. Next review is 30 days, I finished. "She's due for verification." A slow smile spread across his face. "Perfect timing. That's our window. Every day until then is ammunition, if we use it right." I pulled out my phone, opened the calendar. 30 days from today. "Mark it. That's our 0 hour." He took another sip of coffee, grimaced. "Meanwhile, dig deeper. People like this get sloppy. They leave trails." That night, back in my motel room, I spread everything across the bed. Bank statements, screenshots, the uniform violation report. Started building a timeline on my laptop, tracking every lie, every transaction. 2,100 hours. Found their first dinner date, paid with our joint account. 2245. Discovered the business license application, submitted while I was fixing landing gear in a sandstorm. 2330. Uncovered their loan application. I stopped cold. The loan application. Something wasn't right. I pulled up the scanned document, zoomed in. There, in black and white, my discharge papers. Not copies, the originals. Papers that should have been locked in our home safe. Papers only I should have had access to. My hands clenched. They hadn't just stolen my money, my uniform, my trust. They'd stolen my identity. Used my service record to try and secure a veteran's business loan. I grabbed my phone, texted Victor, "Found something. Big." His response came immediately. "How big?" "Identity theft. Veteran loan fraud. Used my discharge papers." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally, "Send everything. Now." I started scanning, uploading. Each document, Another round in the chamber. The clock on my phone read 00:15. 29 days, 23 hours, 45 minutes until the audit. Every second counted now. And we were going to use them all. I'd never been much for social media. Give me a broken turbine over a touchscreen any day. But watching their online parade of lies? That became my new mission. Every morning started the same. Coffee, laptop, screenshots. Their digital footprint was like a neon sign pointing to guilt. Trevor. Yeah, I finally learned the boyfriend's name. Couldn't post enough about his service. There he was at the local VFW, wearing my ribbons. Another shot at a veterans fundraiser, standing proud in my dress blues. Each image made my jaw clench tighter. You know what's funny about arrogant people? They think they're untouchable. These two didn't just flaunt their affair. They monetized it. Kimberly started posting military spouse support videos from our front porch, the same porch where I used to drink coffee before dawn shifts. Now she was selling veteran-owned products, using our old photos as credentials. Victor called on day 3. You seeing all this? Every post, I said, forwarding another screenshot. They're not even trying to hide it. Better for us. Keep capturing everything, especially the business posts. I had a folder just for those. Their company website was a masterpiece of stolen valor. Trevor posed in front of jets, probably Google Images, claiming maintenance expertise. They even used my deployment stories, twisted to fit his fake service record. Got something special, I told Victor. They're running Facebook ads, targeting military families. His low whistle crackled through the phone. Payment records? Downloaded, all traced to our joint account. Perfect. Adding it to Exhibit C. The legal petition was growing thick with evidence. Victor had every violation tagged to specific UCMJ articles. Unauthorized wear of uniform, false claims of service, financial fraud, each charge backed by timestamps, screenshots, bank records. But it was the Instagram posts that really showed their contempt. Hashtags like #AchmVetLife and #Military Marriage under photos of them celebrating with my benefits. One shot caught my eye. Trevor at our kitchen table, surrounded by loan paperwork, wearing my old unit baseball cap. The caption read, Building Our Dream, One Contract at a Time. JAR's veteran-owned Ron Blessed. I sent that one to Victor with 3 words. This ends soon. Then came Wednesday. I was cross-referencing bank statements when a new alert hit my inbox. Another loan application filed that morning. Not just any loan, a $250,000 veteran business expansion grant. My hands shook as I pulled up the documents. They'd gotten bolder. This application had everything. My service records, deployment date, even medical history. All forged or stolen from our home files. They were building their future on my past, dollar by dollar. I called Victor immediately. They filed again, $250,000 this time. Send it over. I heard papers shuffling. Jesus, they're really... We need to move, I cut in. Now, before they burn through more. Silence on the line. Then, petitions ready. But the timing's perfect. I was already pulling up the calendar. Audits in 20 days. If we drop this now, they'll have no time to hide the money trail. Victor's chair creaked. First light tomorrow? I thought of Kimberly's last text. Don't make this hard. Well, sunrise would make it plenty hard. Dawn, I agreed. Let's scorch them. I spent that night reviewing our evidence one last time. 7 days of surveillance had yielded over 200 exhibits. Photos, videos, bank records, loan docs, all proving a calculated fraud. The couple who thought they'd stolen my life had documented every theft themselves. The clock hit midnight. I sent Victor our final message. Coordinates locked. Weapons hot. His reply came seconds later. Copy that. Time to light the fire. Victor called at 0600 sharp. Packages prepped. Want to watch the delivery? I'd barely slept, spending most of the night pacing my motel room. I'll pass. Just let me know when it's done. Copy that. His voice had that steady jag tone, the one that meant someone's world was about to implode. I'll handle the in-person service. Digital copies hit the review board at 800. My stomach churned as I hung up. 9 years of military service teaches you about waiting, the endless hours before a mission, the dead time between maintenance checks. But this wait? This was different. Personal. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Victor's text was simple. Delivered. Both copies. She signed herself. I could picture it. Kimberly, probably still in her morning yoga gear, scrawling her signature without reading. She always did that. Signed things without looking. Used to drive me crazy during tax season. Now that habit was about to bite back hard. The petition wasn't just paper. It was a precision weapon. 47 pages of documented violations, each one backed by their own social media posts and financial records. The Military Review Board would see everything. Trevor wearing my uniform in public, Kimberly's benefits fraud, the stolen valor business scheme, all of it tagged to specific UCMJ articles and federal statutes. I tried to work on my truck to pass the time. The familiar smell of grease and metal usually centered me, but not today. My hands kept shaking on the wrench. Around 1400, I gave up and grabbed my laptop instead. Their live stream was still going strong, some promotional thing for their veteran-owned product line. Trevor stood in my old workshop, wearing my unit patches, demonstrating what he called military-grade maintenance techniques. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so damn infuriating. And that's how we handled hydraulic checks in the sandbox, he was saying, holding a tool completely wrong. The comments section filled with thank yous and heart emojis. Kimberly popped into frame, all smiles and energy. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Big announcement coming this weekend about our expansion plans. My phone rang. Victor. Turn on your email, he said without preamble. Board response just landed. I opened the message with steady hands. Military efficiency at its finest. 3 paragraphs. Direct and devastating. The review board had accepted our petition for immediate investigation. Assets frozen pending review. Benefits suspended. Full audit accelerated. How fast? I asked. They're moving now. Already flagged their accounts. Victor's smile was audible. By morning, every dollar they touched will be locked down. The base finance office is pulling records as we speak. Back on the live stream, Trevor was answering questions about his deployment experience, using my stories, my missions, my life. What about the uniform violation? I watched him adjust my ribbons, probably didn't even know what they meant. Already forwarded to security forces and local PD. Impersonating military personnel's a federal offense. They'll handle that part. I nodded, then remembered he couldn't see me. Copy that. Cole. Victor's voice softened slightly. Get some rest. Tomorrow's gonna be busy. The live stream chat was still rolling, fans asking about future projects. Kimberly promised big things coming. If she only knew. Thanks, Victor. For everything. Thank me when it's done. Oh, and Cole? Yeah? Don't watch their stream all night. Trust me. Watching them live in their last few hours of denial won't help you sleep. He was right. I closed the laptop, silencing their voices mid-sentence. 9 years of aircraft maintenance had taught me something else besides patience. Every system has critical points. Hit them right, and the whole thing comes apart. Tomorrow would be their critical point. Everything they'd built on lies, the business, the benefits, the borrowed valor, was about to collapse. Not with a bang or a showdown, but with the quiet precision of military justice. I lay back on the motel bed, finally feeling tired. The air conditioning hummed like a distant turbine. Through the thin curtains, I could see the base lights glowing against the night sky. Somewhere over there, Papers were moving, accounts were freezing, and wheels were turning. For the first time since coming home, I slept soundly. Morning hit like a thunderclap. My phone lit up with notifications before I'd even finished my first cup of coffee. Victor's messages rolled in rapid fire. Benefits terminated. Letters processing. IRS found the discrepancies. Turn on Channel 4. I flicked on the motel TV just in time to catch the morning news. There she was, Kimberly, trying to shield her face from cameras outside the base finance office. The headline crawler told the story. Military spouse benefits fraud. Investigation launched. The reporter's voice cut through. Sources confirm multiple violations involving misuse of military benefits and unauthorized business activities. My coffee went cold as I watched. Kimberly's designer handbag, bought with my combat pay, swung wildly as she pushed past reporters. No comment, no tears, just that same entitled stride I'd seen the night I came home. By noon, their social media empire had crumbled. Account after account went dark. Their business page disappeared. The veteran-owned label vanished like morning fog. Even their personal profiles, once flooding feeds with stolen valor selfies, blinked out of existence. I drove to the strip mall where Trevor liked to hold his fake veteran meetups. Found a quiet spot on the parking garage roof with a thermos of fresh coffee. The view stretched across the whole shopping center, including the military surplus store where he bought his knockoff gear. My phone buzzed. Victor again. He's there, using your papers. Security forces en route. I settled in, sipping slowly. The fall air felt clean, carrying that hint of winter that always reminded me of pre-flight checks before dawn. Below, life moved in its normal rhythm, until it didn't. 3 patrol cars rolled in silent, no lights, professional, clean. They positioned themselves around Trevor's shiny new truck, the one he'd financed using my service record. I watched through binoculars as he walked out of the surplus store, carrying another bag of probably fake medals. The takedown was textbook. Trevor tried running at first, scattering papers across the pavement. But security forces moved fast, efficient. In seconds, he was face down, cuffs glinting in the afternoon sun. His stolen valor costume, my uniform, looked pathetic now, wrinkled and wrong on his struggling frame. Phones came out. Cameras rolled. Local news vans appeared like vultures drawn to carry on. The headline would write itself, Stolen Valor Arrest. Man caught impersonating active service member. My phone vibrated. A news alert. Trevor's mugshot, already online. His face showed none of that cocky grin now. Just shock, confusion, and the slow dawn of consequences. The article detailed everything. The uniform violations, the identity theft, the fraudulent loans. His fantasy life, built on borrowed honor, collapsed in black and white. You watching? Victor texted. From a distance, I replied. Smart man. IRS just delivered their package to your wife. 7 figures in back taxes and penalties. I took another sip of coffee. Below, the police cars pulled away. Lights finally flashing. The crowd thinned. Life resumed its rhythm. But something was still missing. The final piece. The official letter that would seal everything shut. How long on the military's final notification? I texted Victor. Processing now. Should hit by end of day. I stayed on that rooftop bench until sunset, watching the strip mall empty out. The same sun that had risen on their empire now set on its ruins. My coffee was long gone, but I didn't need it anymore. The air had that crisp clarity that comes before full dark. 9 years of service had taught me to wait out storms, to trust in systems, to let justice move at its own pace. This wasn't the kind of victory that needed my presence. It was better witnessed from afar, like watching a controlled demolition reduce a faulty structure to rubble. My phone lit up one last time. Victor. Letters in the pipeline. Want me to call when it lands? Yes, I typed back. Everything else? Done. Complete. They're finished. I packed up my thermos and binoculars. The parking garage had emptied except for my rental car. Below, the surplus store's lights went dark, their military discount sign flickering out. The letter was all that remained, the final official word. I drove back to my motel, the night wrapping around me like a familiar blanket, waiting for that last piece to fall. The internet's a funny thing. Drop one mugshot, one arrest report, and suddenly, everyone's an investigator. Trevor and Kimberly's perfect little social media life didn't just unravel, it exploded. You ever watch those controlled demolitions where they bring down old Vegas casinos? It was like that, but with reputations instead of concrete. I sat in my motel room, scrolling through my laptop. Reddit threads popped up faster than I could read them. Stolen valor exposed. Fake vet caught using real serviceman's identity. The comments section was a war zone of its own. Veterans sharing similar stories, civilians expressing disgust, former clients of their business coming forward with complaints. Someone had dug up Trevor's old Facebook posts, the ones where he claimed combat experience in places I'd actually served. They placed them side by side with my real deployment photos. The contrast was brutal. His pristine uniform in mall parking lots versus my grease-stained camis next to actual aircraft. Reality versus fantasy, laid bare for everyone to see. The business review sites were particularly savage. Their company page, once filled with glowing testimonials, now displayed a sea of one-star ratings. Fraudulent business run by stolen valor perpetrator. Owner arrested for impersonating military personnel. Each new review twisted the knife deeper, but I felt no joy. Just quiet confirmation. Victor called around noon. "Cole, you seeing all this?" "Hard to miss." I was printing another article, adding it to my growing folder. Not for revenge, for records. Every military man knows the value of documentation. It's trending on military forums now. Security forces sent out alerts to all bases in the region. Your wife's boyfriend is becoming quite the celebrity, just not the kind he wanted. I glanced at my dress blues hanging in the motel closet, perfectly pressed. Any word on the letter? That's why I'm calling. Just got confirmation from JAG. The final revocation notice is being processed. Should hit your inbox within the hour. My throat tightened. This was it. The official end. Thanks, Victor, for everything. You did the heavy lifting, Cole. I just helped with the paperwork. He paused. What are you going to do when it arrives? I looked at my uniform again. Something quiet. After hanging up, I went back to archiving the fallout. Local news had picked up the story. Local business owner arrested for military identity theft. They'd interviewed some of Trevor's fake veteran buddies, who now claimed they'd always had suspicions. Amazing how quick rats abandon a sinking ship. My email pinged at 2:47 p.m. Subject line: Official Notice. Benefits. Revocation and Status Update. The Department of Defense logo sat at the top, formal and final. I printed it before even reading it fully. Added it to the folder. Then I sat back and let the words sink in. All spousal entitlements, revoked. All unauthorized benefits, terminated. All claims against my service record, dismissed. My name, cleared. 9 years of service, untarnished. My record, my honors, my identity, all restored to their rightful place. The letter was cold, official, and absolutely beautiful in its finality. I stood up, walked to the closet, and ran my hand over my dress blues. The fabric felt right, familiar. Each metal, each stripe, earned through sweat and sacrifice, not borrowed or stolen. I'd pressed this uniform 3 times since arriving at the motel, though I hadn't worn it yet. But now it was time. My phone buzzed again. Another news alert. Stolen valor update. Business shut down amid federal investigation. Below it, A photo of Kimberly locking up their office, face hidden behind designer sunglasses. The empire they'd built on lies was now just another cautionary tale. I opened my laptop one last time, checking the location for tomorrow. The Military Museum dedication, 10 a.m. sharp. A celebration of genuine service and sacrifice. Everything Trevor had tried to fake. I shut down the computer and turned to my uniform. Started laying it out piece by piece, the way I'd done countless times before deployments. Each element in its place, each detail perfect. Because tomorrow wasn't about revenge or gloating. It was about something else entirely. The sun was setting when I finished my preparations. Through the motel window, I could see the airbase in the distance, lights starting to twinkle on the flight line. Somewhere out there, jets were still being fixed by people like me, people who understood that honor isn't something you can borrow or steal. I set my alarm for dawn and lay down, the letters safely stored in my folder. Tomorrow would come soon enough, and for the first time since coming home, I felt ready to wear my uniform again. The autumn wind carried a hint of jet fuel from the nearby base as I straightened my tie in the car mirror. Around me, families were already gathering on the museum grounds, kids running with little American flags while parents snapped photos. The sight brought back memories of my first deployment ceremony, back when Kimberly still looked at me with pride instead of calculation. I adjusted my cover and stepped out into the crisp afternoon. The museum's new wing gleamed in the October sun, its glass walls reflecting the vintage aircraft displayed outside. A podium stood ready, surrounded by rows of folding chairs. Several other service members in dress blues nodded as I passed. No one here knew my story, and that's exactly how I wanted it. "Looking sharp, Staff Sergeant." Victor's voice came from behind me. He wore a tailored suit, his jag pin catching the light. "Didn't expect to see you here," I said, though somehow his presence felt right. "Wouldn't miss it." He handed me a program. My name was listed among the honorees, third from the bottom. Not for rank or kills or medals, but for something else. Distinguished service in aircraft maintenance and technical innovation. 9 years of keeping planes in the air, through sandstorms and firefights, of finding ways to patch metal and keep pilots safe when supplies ran low. The letter sat heavy in my breast pocket, sealed in a plain white envelope. After today, I'd drive by our old house, her house now, and leave it on the doorstep. No confrontation, no last words, just official confirmation that her borrowed power was gone. 10 minutes to start, Victor said, checking his watch. "You ready?" I nodded, watching a young boy nearby pretend to fly, arms spread wide like wings. "Yeah, I am." The ceremony began with the color guard, then the anthem. I stood at attention, feeling the familiar weight of my uniform, my real uniform, earned through years of grease and grit and determination. The retired general at the podium spoke about sacrifice, about the invisible heroes who kept our forces in the air, about men and women who served without seeking glory. A light breeze rustled the flags as he read through the honorees. I kept my eyes on the sky, tracking the contrails of a C-130 passing overhead. The same kind of plane I'd patched up countless times, sending crews home safe to families who actually deserved them. "Staff Sergeant Cole Merrick," the general announced. Polite applause followed. I didn't step forward or wave. This wasn't about attention. It was about standing tall in a uniform that belonged to me, that carried my own history in every thread. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur of speeches and ribbon cutting. Afterward, as families toured the new exhibits, Victor found me near the vintage F-4 Phantom display. "Mission accomplished," he said quietly, clapping me on the shoulder. No need to elaborate. We both knew he meant more than just the ceremony. "Thank you," I replied, "for everything." He just nodded once, understanding in his eyes, then melted into the crowd of visitors. I stayed a moment longer, feeling the letter's edges through my jacket. Soon I'd complete this final task, but not yet. For now, I wanted to savor this moment of standing in the autumn sun, surrounded by machines I'd spent my life maintaining, wearing stripes I'd earned through honest service. A young airman passed by, fresh-faced and eager. He snapped a sharp salute, which I returned with precision. That simple gesture held more honor than all of Trevor's stolen swagger, more truth than all of Kimberly's empty promises. The letter shifted slightly as I moved, ready for its final journey. But there was no hurry, no rush to end this chapter. The air smelled of fall leaves and aviation fuel, and somewhere above, another plane traced its path across the endless blue, carried on wings kept strong by people who understood what it meant to serve with integrity. I stood straighter, adjusting my cover one last time. The uniform felt right, natural, mine. I waited until the museum crowd thinned before heading to my car. The ceremony program lay folded on the passenger seat. I'd keep that, maybe frame it someday. Not to remember the betrayal, but to mark the moment I stood tall again. You know that feeling when you're about to close a heavy door? That split second where your muscles tense, ready for the weight? That's how driving across town felt. Every stoplight gave me a chance to check the letter, making sure the official seal showed clearly through the envelope's window. The military didn't mess around with paperwork like this. Every detail had to be perfect. The neighborhood hadn't changed much in the months since I'd left. Same cracked sidewalks, same overgrown hedges at the Peterson place. Mrs. Rodriguez's wind chimes still played their tuneless song from 2 doors down. Back when I deployed, those chimes had driven me crazy during night shifts. Now they just felt like background music to someone else's life. I parked 3 houses down, habit more than hesitation. The autumn air hit cooler than at the museum, carrying that sharp edge that meant winter wasn't far off. My dress shoes clicked softly against the concrete. Funny how different that sound was from combat boots. The front walk seemed shorter than I remembered. Maybe because I wasn't carrying roses this time, wasn't trying to stretch out that moment of anticipation. The porch steps creaked in the same spots, though. Some things you don't forget, even when you want to. Movement caught my eye from the house across the street. Old Mr. Henderson, watering his eternal tomato plants. He'd been our neighbor since before Kimberly and I bought the place. Used to bring us fresh vegetables every summer, tell stories about his time in Vietnam. He squinted at me now, recognition dawning slowly. I could have stopped, could have let him ask his questions about where I'd been, what had happened, could have watched his face change as understanding set in. But that wasn't why I came. The screen door mesh still had that small tear near the handle. My fault. From rushing inside during a thunderstorm years ago. The main door was closed, no lights visible through the windows. Maybe no one was home. Maybe they were both inside, planning their next con. Didn't matter anymore. The letter slid easily under the door, disappearing into the shadow beneath. No sound of it being picked up, no movement inside, just silence, broken only by the distant wind chimes and the soft whir of Mr. Henderson's sprinkler. I straightened up, adjusted my cover, and turned away. Down the street, another neighbor I didn't recognize stood watching from their driveway, coffee mug frozen halfway to their lips. I gave them a single nod. Parade ground perfect, just like they taught us in basic. The walk back to my car felt lighter. Each step carried me further from what used to be ours, and closer to whatever came next. Mr. Henderson had stopped watering, his weathered hand raised in a gesture that might have been a wave, might have been a salute. I returned it either way. You spend enough time fixing planes, you learn that every repair job has a final step. That last torque check, that final safety wire, that moment when you step back and know it's done. This was mine. No dramatic showdown, no last-minute revelations. Just a letter under a door, and the quiet certainty that some bridges stay burned. My reflection in the car window caught my eye. Dress blues still perfect. Cover set at the exact angle regulations demanded. 9 years of service written in silver stripes and polished buttons. All mine, all earned. The car started on the first try, like always. Before pulling away, I took one last look at the house in my rearview mirror. The same yellow siding, the same crooked mailbox, the same worn porch swing. But it wasn't home anymore. Just a place where I'd learned the difference between wearing a uniform and earning one. Mrs. Rodriguez's wind chimes faded behind me as I drove away, their irregular rhythm replaced by the steady hum of my tires on asphalt. The letter would do its work without me there to watch. Some victories don't need an audience, and some things need to be said, even if you're the only one who hears them. 6 weeks after dropping that letter, I was back where I belonged, surrounded by the familiar smell of jet fuel and hydraulic fluid. The hangar buzzed with the usual controlled chaos, impact wrenches singing their metallic songs, radios crackling with tower chatter, and the constant hum of industrial fans fighting the late autumn heat. I'd been asked to speak to a class of junior mechanics about aircraft maintenance in combat zones. These kids were fresh-faced and eager, still learning the difference between reading about repairs and making them with sand in your eyes and deadline pressure crushing down. The kind of lessons you can't get from any manual. "Staff Sergeant Merrick," one of them called out, after I'd finished describing a particularly tricky repair in Kandahar. "Is it true what they say about you?" The instructor shot him a warning look, but I waved it off. Base gossip travels faster than supersonic jets. I knew my story had made the rounds. "Depends what they're saying," I replied, keeping my tone light. The familiar weight of my maintenance badge pressed against my chest, a reminder of who I was, who I'd always been. Another trainee, Martinez, according to her nameplate, raised her hand. "Sir, have you ever lost something that really mattered?" Her voice was hesitant, but direct. The kind of honest question you get from someone too new to know better, and too genuine to ignore. The class went quiet. Even the distant sound of aircraft taxiing seemed to fade. I could have brushed it off, could have steered the conversation back to torque specifications and inspection protocols. Instead, I reached for my wallet. The leather was worn smooth from years in my back pocket, cracked at the edges like the surface of the flight line after too many summer days. Inside, behind my ID and a few worn bills, was the photo I'd started carrying. Not the old ones, not the wedding shot or deployment goodbyes. This one was newer. I pulled it out carefully, held it up where the fluorescent lights caught the glossy surface. There I was, standing at attention in front of the military museum. The sun hung behind me like a spotlight, catching on every button and badge I'd earned. My cover cast a sharp shadow across my face, but you could still see the expression, not angry, not bitter, just steady, present. "Lost something?" I smoothed the photo's corner with my thumb. "Yeah, but sometimes what matters isn't what you lose, it's what you keep." The photo made its way around the class. Each student handled it carefully, like they understood the weight it carried. When it returned, I folded it precisely along its creases before tucking it away. "Look," I said, gesturing at the F-16 looming behind us in the hangar. "Every aircraft you'll work on has thousands of parts. Lose one critical component, and the whole thing's grounded. But you know what we do?" I waited until I had every eye in the room. "We don't waste time mourning the broken part. We replace it. We repair. We get that bird back in the air where it belongs." Martinez nodded slowly, understanding flickering across her face. "So, it's about rebuilding? It's about knowing what's yours." I tapped my chest where my maintenance badge sat. "What you've earned, what no one can take unless you let them." The instructor checked his watch, probably worried I'd wandered too far from the scheduled curriculum. But these were the lessons that stuck, the ones that came from scars rather than school books. You want to know what I learned? I stood straighter, parade ground perfect. You don't earn loyalty by borrowing a man's uniform. You earn it by wearing your own with pride, no matter what storms you fly through. The class stayed quiet for a moment, letting that sink in. Then someone's radio crackled to life. Another aircraft needed attention. Real work calling. I nodded to the instructor and stepped aside, letting him take back control of his classroom. As the students gathered their tools and headed for their assignments, I caught Martinez looking back at me. She straightened her own uniform, just coveralls, not dress blues, but worn with the same pride. That's when I knew the message had landed exactly where it needed to. I believe stories like this find us for a reason. If this one touched you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day, and tomorrow's might be the one your heart's been waiting for.